Well, today we have two vessels that are conditioned beer. So we have a beer that we prepared previously and fermented and moved into these conditioning flasks, and they've been sitting here in these 20-liter carboys for about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, somewhere about that. At that time, of course, you can let them condition for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks would be fine. So they've certainly had enough time. During that time that it's conditioning, some more of the solids will fall out of solution. So we have a bit of solid now in the bottom, which is of course dead yeast cells and other debris that would have been in the beer as it fermented. So this is really ready now for bottling. But in order to bottle it, we're going to need to prepare a sugar solution. We'll need to prime the solution that we have here, the beer, so that the yeast, there's still live yeast cells there, have additional sugar in order to carbonate the beer. Now, in order to do that, we're going to prepare our priming solution, and I have that ready to go here. I have a hot plate with a nice steel vessel. You could do this in a kitchen with a saucepan, and I'm going to add to it, in this case, I'm going to add to it 100 grams of sugar, and that's for about 3.5 gallons of beer. And I'm going to add that to the vessel. I'm going to go ahead and add some water. So I'm adding, at least by using the English system, I am adding about 1.5 cups of water to mix in there. So I have that all in there. I can mix that up, and I'm going to heat that to boiling. Once that reaches a boiling temperature, I'll let it boil for about 5 or 10 minutes. That'll sanitize the solution and sanitize this metal pot. Then I'll chill it in this ice water, and I can come back and add it to our wort, which we'll rack into a new bucket. So once this is chilled down, we'll come back and take a look at that. In order to prepare for bottling, it's important to have clean bottles. And the bottles, that means they can't have any residue in them. A lot of times when you collect bottles that have been used for recycling, if there was any beer left in them and they allowed to dry them, they'll get, of course, a dried molasses-like syrup in the bottom of them, and they can be really a headache to clean. So you really have to be careful about those. I often use the eye test. If I hold a bottle to the light, of course that's clear, that's easy with a clear bottle, I can see if there's any residue right along the seam in the bottom of the bottle, and I can see that with the amber bottles too. If they don't pass that sight test, I'm going to have to clean them. And a dishwasher is the only way to really get that out. Hot water and allow them to go through a dishwasher. Hand cleaning I found to be nearly impossible to remove that best residue. Best thing to do if you're recycling bottles is as soon as you pour the beer, rinse them out 2 or 3 times with tap water and allow them to dry upside down, and you won't have that problem. These have been properly stored for recycling, so they're ready to go. That came out of the dishwasher. It looks great. But I'm now going to need to sanitize it. So I have some sanitizer solution, and I put it in this little pump apparatus, which is very nice. This is a phosphate solution, so this is phosphoric acid, food grade, that's used for sanitation and cleaning, and I've added that to this little device that allows me to rinse the inside of the bottles. And so here you can really see how this is going to work. If I just pump this down, it'll bring the sanitizer right up into the bottle. I can clean it, I'll clean the top just like that, and I can let it drip dry, and I'll put it in this rack where I'm collecting them. I like to, even though brewers like to use brown bottles, I like to have at least one clear bottle, but it allows me to see how well this apparatus is working, and it allows me to determine whether I'm really cleaning the bottles appropriately. So even in a batch of beer, if I'm making 5 to 10 gallons of beer or 20 to 40 liters, I'll have one glass bottle in there just to see what's going on. So now I have 24 bottles that are ready, all prepared this way, cleaned in a dishwasher first, labels have been removed previously, and then we've sanitized them, and they're really ready now for bottling. We're ready now to rack the beer to the bottling bucket. So this is our conditioning vessel, and we've allowed it to condition. This is a amber ale that was made with the chemistry 1021 class. And so what I'm going to do now is transfer it to a bucket here. This is just a standard bucket that we use for fermentation. We used it for fermenting this batch. It doesn't have a tap on it. I don't use one of those for bottling. I just go ahead and rack the beer to the bottles as well. This has been entirely sanitized, so I've rinsed it with the phosphoric acid sanitizing solution. And you don't need to rinse. You can just go ahead and So drip dry is fine for what we're going to do. The phosphoric acid and the phosphate salts that are in that cleansing solution won't affect your beer because the beer has, from the grains, already has phosphate ions, hydrogen and dihydrogen phosphate ions present. And the amount that you're adding for the cleanser is dwarfed by what's in the beer itself. So we're going to go ahead and remove the airlock. So there's the airlock. We'll just put that in the sink. Everything's been cleaned in sanitizer, and again, I'm not going to have to rinse any of this with water. I'll just allow it to drip dry. It's got a little bit of the phosphoric acid in it, but that won't affect a thing. And we'll go ahead and put this auto siphon in there. These auto siphons are really nice and have become quite common in the home brewing market. It's just a siphon that has a little pump action, so I can go ahead and pump it, and the beer will now transfer directly into the bottling bucket. I'll try to put that hose underneath the beer so we're not oxygenating it any more than necessary. So we want to just get it to transfer into there as oxygen-free as possible as we can do. Of course, we're in the open atmosphere. Here I have the priming sugar that we prepared previously. This was boiled for about 10 minutes. And I like to wear gloves, and I sanitize my gloves too so I can pick these up. I like to wipe off the outside so I'm not dripping any of the ice water in there. I'm just going to take this sugar solution and I'm going to add it directly to the bucket. So now it's properly primed with sugar, and that's the correct dose that we need in order to provide enough sugar per bottle to carbonate in the bottle. So once this is completed, we've racked the beer into the bottling bucket, we'll set up for bottling the bottles which we now have clean, and we can cap them and complete the process. And now we're ready to actually bottle the beer. We've actually transferred everything from the conditioning vessel to the bottling bucket, as we would normally call it. We did that by racking the beer with a siphon. Left behind in the conditioning vessel would be dead yeast cells, denatured proteins, trub. This is what we would call the trub. That we don't want that trub, so we've got that all put aside. I did collect some of the beer before we transferred to the bottling bucket, so before it had sugar in it, so that we could measure specific gravity. And you want to do this before you add the sugar, because the sugar would affect the specific gravity. So we collected that directly from the conditioning vessel. When we first started to rack the beer, I just collected some in this vessel. And I'll put this aside. Of course, this was not sanitized, so that will not be added back. That's just for measurement purposes, and that'll give us that information. Now I've got everything in the bottling bucket, and I kept it covered while we were waiting, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the cover at this point. Again, I had my auto siphon in here, which was, again, it was all sanitized, and so it's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and just take it out of the bucket. So we have that ready to go. I can move in mix the sugars in. I'll give it just 1 or 2 turns. I don't want to really oxygenate it. But now I'm going to take a bottler. This is a special adapter that I'll add to the auto siphon. And it has a spring-loaded fitting at the very end that allows you to deliver beer only when you have it in the beer bottle. So I can go ahead and attach this hose, and I'll put it into the first bottle here. I'll choose the clear bottle so we can see it. There's the clear bottle. And I'll hold it down and give the siphon a little bit of a push, and we'll be ready to go. And we're filling, we're bottling. What's nice about these auto siphons is they fill it right to the correct level. Of course, there's a little foam in the beginning. We'll get a little less as that goes on, but we'll just let it come right to the top, and then we'll remove the siphon, and it's a perfectly filled bottle. You'll want to get comfortable while you're doing this, so I've got a chair that I can sit in, and I keep all the bottles in these crates so they don't fall over. There's different ways you can do that, but loose bottles on the floor is certainly not something you want to do. And of course, it's a messy job. You will spill a little bit of beer over the side of the bottle. So some people will use a picnic cooler or ice chest to put the bottles in, because that way they don't make a mess on their kitchen floor. I don't have to worry about that so much here. In our environment, I can just sweep up the lab floor when we're done. But you want some way to hold these bottles. Of course, when they're all done, I'm going to cap them with crown caps, and we'll at that point have bottled beer. It'll need to sit and it'll need to sit and carbonate for 1 to 2 weeks. Usually 2 weeks is required in order for carbonation to take place. And at that point, I could go ahead and refrigerate the beer, and it's ready for consumption. We're ready to now cap and bottle the beer. Of course, it's already in the bottle, so all we have to do is take care of the capping. All the caps are sanitized, so I've run them through the same phosphate or phosphoric acid sanitizer, and they just need to be drip dry, and they be placed on top of the bottles, just like that, and that'll take care of it. I like to get the caps on the bottles pretty quickly because that keeps, of course, the oxygen out and anything from getting in. And then I just carefully remove them from my crate. I can put this capper on it, and I can just press down, and now I have a beautifully capped bottle of beer. So I'll just do that 70 times, and I think we'll be done.